What's up and welcome to Per My Last Email. So glad to have you in the studio with us again. Every week we get to hang out.
So true.
I love it. Best part of my week. I'm Kyle.
I'm Kayla.
And today we're going to talk about communication at work.
Yes.
Have you ever had to navigate the seemingly 18 channels that we have to navigate at work now?
18.
To communicate?
Yeah.
AIM.
You're using
Handwritten post.
I'm using carrier pigeon personally.
Yeah. I have the owl in Harry Potter that sends around messages. But it's complicated out there because
it is.
We have moved, I think, from like normal in-person communication all the time, and then this thing called the internet happened, and now there's like 800 different ways to get in touch with your coworkers. So we're going to break down this kind of messy world we live in of communication at the office. But first, Kayla, I have a question for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
How would you describe your Slack communication style?
My Slack communication style? Chaotic neutral. I think that I, as an extrovert, as we know, I like to process externally. So sometimes I can Slack a little bit like a William Faulkner novel. It's very stream of consciousness.
You hit me with some like limericks sometimes.
I press enter when it feels right, not necessarily when the sentence is over. You know what I mean? Like, you can expect 15 messages from me and you really won't know what's going on until message 12.
It's like a haiku of some.
Yeah.
And you're like trying to decipher what you're saying.
Yeah,
it's kind of fun. It's a little game.
It is fun. How would you describe yours?
I think it's like over-caffeinated freshman boy.
Unpack that.
Like, it's just like, let's go.
Okay.
Huge.
Yep.
Boom. It's like it's just excitement.
It's only excitement.
It's positivity.
I see it.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Do you agree?
Yes. If I have to see it, all caps, LFG, exclamation point, times a million, like, let's go.
Yeah.
And sometimes now in our friend group after working together, we'll text each other in Kyle Slackisms. Like, what's Gucci fam-a-lam? Like,
I have dropped a what's Gucci fam-a-lam a few times.
You always got your vibes. I see it.
If I say that to you, that means we're close.
Yeah.
Because I'm not dropping that to senior management.
You should.
Yeah, maybe.
Have you considered?
Maybe I should. So I want to start with Slack. And we were talking before, I feel like there's like 3 ways you communicate now.
And I think that's wrong, but I would like to hear you.
In the office. The 3 are Slack or like Teams. There's some like IM, DM-based messaging platform. Then there's email, which is like, I feel like the OG of like internet communication. And then there's this thing called in-person meetings, which are, wild now to think about. And all of those different settings, all those different mediums require a different communication strategy. And I think communicating effectively is super important in your career, but mastering each 3 is difficult. You don't think there's 3?
I think there's 5.
Virtual reality.
No.
Augmented reality.
No. I think yes, probably those are the 3. But if you're thinking about like, okay, informal written communication, that's your Slacks, your Teams. Formal written communication, that's your memos, your emails. Then there's informal verbal communication. Not to overcomplicate it. That's phone. Right, that's your Slack huddles. That's your call me.
You're in the break room.
Yeah, like
chopping it up.
No. This is all virtual still.
Okay.
Then you have virtual face to face. That's your Zoom meetings, your Google Meets.
Yeah.
And then you have in person.
Yeah.
So basically, to sum it up, that's not that complicated. It's your Slack, it's your email, your phone or your huddle, your Google Meets. And your in person.
Okay, so there's 5.
Yeah.
I think there's 3. 3 seems a little easier to comprehend, but I do agree. You've illuminated the point, which is there's so many different ways of communicating now. If you work for a hybrid team or a fully remote team, like you're juggling so many different channels, and it can be tough to like keep everything straight or have an effective strategy. So I'm excited to chat with you about that. We actually, our producer, Michaela, interviewed an expert in this, Celeste Headlee, who is a communication expert, and she had some thoughts about DM culture, Slack culture. Ooh. So let's hear those to set the scene.
Not surprisingly, our research on IM platforms is much more recent. There's not nearly as much, email's been around for a very, very long time. But yes, the early indicators are that it could possibly even be worse because email people are more likely to edit. Email people are more likely to go into depth, whereas oftentimes on things like Slack or IMs, we will dash off a message and we're less conscious or careful about how that might be perceived. Instant messaging picks up some of the negativity that occurs on social media as well, meaning it's tends to be a little more self-absorbed. We tend to be a little bit more concerned only about what our immediate needs are rather than who's receiving that message. On the other hand, Slack and IM are also kind of a cross between social media and texting. And texting, as long as we use it to a limited extent, can be very efficient. If you use texting as a way to just relay quick information exchanges, and it's the same with Slack, it can be very, very effective and efficient. But it's not useful for anything that has nuance, anything that has complexity.
Celeste kind of just came for you there. She was like, oh yeah, you know the people who just send random messages?
I know.
They're self-absorbed. They can't handle nuance.
No, I think I do agree with her in that the use of IMing has proliferated and it has made communication a little bit more informal. But I don't necessarily think that that's exclusively a bad thing, especially in a hybrid work culture or remote work culture. I feel like a lot of my work friendships or work relationships have developed through Slack. And so I'm not against having nuanced discussions over Slack. I just think once there's a potential for misrepresentation or misunderstanding, that's where you take it to a huddle or to in person.
But I think what you just said is so interesting. You said some of my best friendships at work developed over Slack. And I think the issue is you would never say that about email. You would never be
no, absolutely not.
You've developed a strong work relationship with someone over email?
With external.
Maybe with external, but let's just talk internally, because I think what's hard is Slack is informal. So it feels like you're talking to a friend and you can develop a friendship very fast, but it's also combined with you use it to get work done.
Yeah.
And it's like those two mashed together where it's the informality and like the friendship, which is fun, but getting stuff done can be pretty difficult on there. I think email is like, it's only about work, really. And so it's clear what you're on there for. Like, I feel like Slack is so weird. Like, Slack,
why?
if you just think about it, Slack is so weird. Like, it is like AOL Instant Messenger plus like corporate America just like slammed together.
And what's wrong with that?
I just think if you told 18-year-old Kyle, a non-insignificant part of your life, when you are an adult, will be deciding what emoji to put under a message, like, I would be like, what's even an emoji? Like,
yeah, of course.
It's so weird when you just think about what you do on Slack. You like pick emojis. And the other thing is, there's almost like, Slack could be like very intimidating, I feel like, because there's definitely people that are like good at Slack.
Yeah.
It is the new personality hire, is like being funny and witty and knowing all the right memes on this. And like, I seriously think you could be the worst worker ever. But if you're like crushing it on Slack, it's like, we got to keep John around. Like, that guy, he's pretty funny. Like, it's this really weird world where like it is kind of this office and it's where you have friendships and it's where you have side conversations. It's also where you show up now. And I just find it to be like so absurd sometimes.
Yeah, no, I mean, it first of all, it totally is. But we've also talked about this before, that this Slack is like a second office.
Yeah.
And the way that you show up in Slack can have a material impact on the way that your work is viewed, positively or negatively. Something that you just mentioned, which is about emojis, which I know you were joking, but like I think is actually very important, is that written communication can strip out the tone, the nuance of a communication that like we're talking right now and we can kind of gauge how we're feeling. If we're making a joke, like if you just take the transcript of what we're saying and you like send it to me, like I would be like, what? why are you saying that? Like,
But when
are
you
you
see
mad
me
at
in
me?
person, you realize how funny.
Well, but it's like,
cool I
okay,
am.
well, our like body language and our tone
Exactly.
is like very funny, and we know we're joking with each other, so we won't take it seriously and like an affront. But I think the visual elements, the emojis, the GIFs, if we're still using those, which I don't think we are, try to bring back and reintroduce tone into Slack, which is important, but feels like like a weird like dystopian way to show that you're kidding. Like if I like make a joke and then I do the little cry laughing emoji, I'm like, okay, now she's gonna know that I'm joking.
Yeah.
You know? And like that's so weird. Like, can't we just talk? I don't know. It just feels like you spend so much time thinking about how your messaging is gonna be perceived.
Yep.
That takes a lot of mind space when you could just be working.
Yeah, if companies knew how much mental energy collectively went to like figuring out what emoji to put, like Slack would be banned in an hour.
So do you think that the introduction of Slack or direct messaging has caused first communication to get less formal, or second has like hurt workplace communications?
It's a great question. I think in some ways the medium is the message, or they're both important. And I think Slack is a medium which rewards like informality, speed, kind of like brevity. It's less serious. And so I think because Slack became this new office communication has turned more to those channels, at least in part. I think Slack has made speed way better, and I think you can get things solved faster. And in that way, I think it's really good. It's where Slack, when you try to solve complex problems on Slack, I think you have to realize that this is not a medium designed to do that.
Yep.
It is a medium with no nuance, with no context besides an upside down emoji, which no one knows what that upside down smiley means.
Yep.
Like, it just doesn't have that nuance. And so if you have to like solve a really complex problem, I think that's much easier over email or like a long Google Doc where you can be more nuanced in your thinking, or you actually go and meet face-to-face or virtually to solve those problems. So Slack is really powerful in some ways and a really big weakness in others. And it's the fact that sometimes we can't distinguish between the two that causes issues.
So basically, it's like understanding what format you're supposed to use for various types of messages.
Yeah.
And once you figure that out, then you're kind of like good to go.
Yes, I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like understanding your boss's communication style and all that. And we'll talk about tactics, but there's just some other really like funny things about Slack, like modern workplace culture. And you said something before the show that literally made me laugh out loud.
Oh,
like,
gosh, what was it? I don't remember now.
Your Slack group message.
Okay, so this is what we were talking about, which I think is another really interesting quirk of these DM platforms. Is it's not just for direct messages, it's also for group messages. And so there's like, you know, I'll have a message with me and Sally, and then me, Sally, and Neil, and then me, Sally, Neil, and John. And then like all of those things, it's like, oh, got to talk to Sally first, and then let's loop Neil in, so let's create a new channel. And then, oh, wow, gosh, now John needs to know. And then all of a sudden it becomes a channel, which is like a big deal.
That's, you're asking the question. You're getting down on one knee.
It is a relationship
serious.
builder. And so for me, I think what I was saying was when it goes from the group chat to the channel, that's when I'm like, oh shit, like we're about to be working together for a minute. Like people think this is a real project. Like this is going to get serious.
It's getting serious now that this is a channel. It's not just some fun chat on the side.
Exactly. But
it's a channel now.
It's kind of like weird and funny that like, oh, these are these like etiquette things that we've created. Like, well, when are you supposed to turn a group chat into a channel? Like, when do you archive a channel? When do you ping a channel and say at here, which also always pisses me off.
Oh.
But it's like we've created this entire new platform, and then all of a sudden there's all these rules associated with it.
And they're like implicit rules.
Completely unwritten. And it's like, okay, well, oh my gosh, this person just did this that was so out of pocket. And they're just like, ooh, yay, I'm, creating a group chat. This is so exciting. We're going to all talk about this and it's going to get done quicker. And I think there's just so much like weird implicit rules that we've created for this that like we were meant to hunt. We were not.
We're meant to do two things, hunt and gather.
We were not
That's it. There are no Trello boards.
No. We were not meant to be thinking about channels on Slack. And so it's like, of course, this is all made up, but it is still really important to get your work done.
The other thing, just because I can't get over, when you objectively look at Slack, it's so silly. This person left channel is
So
you're like,
bad.
what happens?
It feels dramatic.
It literally feels like you're having an in-person meeting, and halfway through the meeting, someone
gets
stands up and leaves, and you're
Yes.
like, what did I say?
I know, and it's so funny because it's a completely normal thing. Oh, I am no longer interested in the hashtag dog content channel.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave. And we're like,
It's like, did you get a cat? What happened? What happened?
and to the point where I don't think I've ever left a channel.
I'm scared to leave a channel.
I won't leave a channel. I'll just mute it.
Yes, I'm so scared to leave a channel.
So I am but it's like, this is all made up.
It's all made up.
It's
just
so dumb.
It's so funny to me. The other thing I will say is when there's layoffs,
Yeah.
the first thing you do is you go to Slack
Yes.
and you type in a name because it'll say
Deactivated. Yep.
and you know, like, damn, my friend like just got fired.
And it's one of those things that is so, like, it has become so ingrained.
Yeah.
And like, I remember this when we had a round of layoffs, just scrolling up through our main channel and seeing who became deactivated.
Right.
And then I would text like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person, this person. That's not a very healthy way to find out about a message for like a company.
And it almost feels like you shouldn't have that information,
Yeah.
but like, because you can find it, you're going. It's like it's so tempting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like in a weird way, there's like ghosts of Christmas past, like still in Slack. They're just like grayed out. And you're like, RIP. Like,
no, really. And I think there's a lot of ways that Slack, when used inappropriately, can actually really deteriorate a workplace culture. For example, like sometimes, not at Morning Brew and or at this current job, sometimes I would search certain terms in all of Slack, especially at my last job where there was a lot of like, you wouldn't find out about things until the last minute. There was a lot of like politicking and sneakery, if you will. And so I would search a certain term and I would see all the public channels that people didn't realize was public.
Interesting.
And see the information that people were saying. So then I would be like, okay, guys, I just found out that this deadline is getting moved up by 3 weeks, so we should start prioritizing this a little bit more. Whereas they thought that information was private.
Yeah.
So
that seems like a very Kayla thing to do.
I know.
Like when you're like, I haven't done this at Morning Brew, I'm like, yeah, I don't believe
not
that.
recently. Not recently. But
although I will say, like, I think Morning Brew has like an incredible Slack culture.
I agree.
And I legitimately think, well, we couldn't do this because we wouldn't want like people to know like how we're building stuff. But I would pay for a subscription to like the Daily Stories channel where we build a newsletter because it's like 7 of the funniest, smartest people just riffing back and forth. And I'm like,
and that's their job, which is so
I love
funny.
it. Yeah, it's so cool.
And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show.
The last thing I want to say about Slack, because I just think there's so many of these like common things that we all feel that you've experienced at your work, likely too. The Slack message that just says, hey.
That is my biggest pet peeve.
Okay, it sounds like you might have some more, but why is that your biggest pet peeve?
I do have quite a few. It is also very like me. But I hate the hey or the QQ.
I've QQ'd a few folks. I will
Quick
admit.
question. I'm fine. I'll QQ and then you dash and write the question.
Yeah, it's gotta come as one.
You can't do QQ, enter, and then start typing, get distracted, stop typing, because then people are like, what's the question? You got my attention. I'm sitting here waiting for you to ask me the quick question.
Yeah.
Or the hey, I'm like, give me context.
Hey is just like fight or flight. I'm like, you got to tell me more. Am I fired or am I getting promoted to CEO? It could go either way.
Genuinely, and those are the only two options when you get a hey message. So I completely understand. It is so stressful.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about like the absurdity of Slack, but let's be real. Like you're probably on it all the time.
Yes, or Teams or whatever.
And I think it's really important. So I just want to give like a tactic on Slack or a couple tactics. The first is I do think it's important to be present and viewing it again as like the new office. And so show up when you can. I think it's really important that people like see that you're there. Again, it's a heuristic, our favorite word on the show. But I do think it matters, at least marginally, that people, oh, you're there. You're contributing to the office. It would be like, it's like coming into the office when you live in the city, I think is net positive for your career. Showing up on Slack when you're remote, still net positive for your career. The other thing is, because it's hybrid, I think Slack is such a great way to share wins of other people or for your team. And I think this is the first thing that someone could implement that has a really positive impact is like when your team does something great, someone on your team hits quota, your team just wrote a really great article, you're really proud of a new product you developed, sharing that in a channel and like calling out the select few people that really made that happen, it makes them feel great. It gives them credit, but also it's cool that you're confident enough to be proud of the work that you've done there. So I think those are two things I would implement almost immediately on Slack is like get a little more active and do some shout outs of other people that you know are doing great work. It makes you look good. I think it creates a really great culture. And I think it is positive for your career.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think that that's a really positive way to view Slack.
There's some bad parts too, as we've talked about. Let's move to email.
Yes.
Because obviously you probably have some IM platform at your company, but you also have email. And, you know, how should people be thinking about communicating professionally via email?
I mean, I personally hate email.
Okay.
I think once...
So let's get this right. You hate Slack. You hate email.
No.
Kayla's like, actually, when I'm at work, don't talk to me.
I actually like Slack way more than I like email. I think that internally using email, when you have Slack, feels like there's really only one or two examples or reasons why you should be doing that. First is it's a full company like directive or information that needs to be searchable, like easily findable.
Yeah.
HR policy changes, big updates, new hire announcements.
It feels more like formal. When it's on Slack, I'm always like you're half kidding.
Yeah.
When it's email, I'm like, oh, they're
like
serious.
this is real.
Yeah.
And I'll also see sometimes those big announcements also being posted on Slack, but I like that there's the formality and like the officialness of the email.
The searchability, the like proof of receipt almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The second thing is if it's a project with a variety, like a large number of stakeholders.
Yeah.
So if there are, let's say, 3 main teams working on a big client project, I would much rather have a thread of emails with the most important information and then a Slack channel with all the minutia.
Yes.
Because I think that makes it a lot easier besides scrolling up forever trying to figure out when did we say this person was going to be, you know, have this thing done.
Yeah.
Just having, okay, this is 20 back and forth emails. I love that.
Yeah.
Any other reason, go to Slack.
I think what you said, the last part is what I agree with the most. And my rule of thumb is if you have to scroll on Slack, that's an email.
Yeah.
I should never have to scroll on Slack. In fact, the least I have to scroll, period, is better on that platform. I actually think email is underrated now. And one, I do have to say, email, we were talking about Slack is a little more silly. Email feels like when your parents use your middle name. It's like a little more formal, and they're like,
You're in trouble a little
this is important.
Yeah, you
Listen
better
up,
clean your room.
Kyle Douglas Hagee. I'm like, okay, my ears perk up. That's the email of the office. Here's why I think email is underrated. Slack, as we've talked about, it's quick, it's fast, it's witty, it's like a different game, and it's good for like minute updates. But I think email is best because it is a little more thoughtful. There's more friction to like sending an email, and it's expected that messages can be longer. My sense is for us and for generations under us, we grew up in like quick response culture, Twitter, AIM, like all of those things, like we're very used to that. And depending on your like major in college, you might have actually never written something that is like kind of substantial. And I think it's a great way to differentiate yourself in your career. When I get an email or like a Google Doc that's long, to me, effective writing is downstream of like effective thinking. You can send a Slack and then we've talked about this, like 5 minutes later, you're like, that was the dumbest thing I've ever slacked. Like I take it all back. I just didn't think about it because it's meant to be quick. An email is like, I really wanted to put thought into this. And I'm going to walk you through exactly, you know, here's the problem. Here's where we're trying to go. Here's why I think we're going to get there using this strategy. You would never send something like that on Slack. And I'm worried that we've lost, like email is losing a bit of like popularity. And so we either have Slack, which is like fast, bang, bang, like communication, or in-person meetings, which feel like they lack still a little bit of like next steps, clear articulation. It feels like a little bit more back and forth, again, like Slack. So I actually think email is underrated, and your ability to be really great at taking complex ideas, simplifying them, articulating your point of view is going to be a huge career unlock. And I think there's so much room for improvement on that front. So get good at email, get good at writing little longer memos on Google Doc, and I think you're going to stand out.
Yeah, I agree with you, although I do think you sound a little like old man yells at cloud or whatever.
That might be true. But
kids these days.
Just to push back on that, like I think it's undeniable that Slack just is not built for nuance.
Yeah.
And in-person conversations have a lot of nuance, but like there is that like next step piece that's missing. So I just think, you know, written communication long form will always have a place, and I'm always more convinced by arguments I get over email that are a little more nuanced than like one Slack that has like a cowboy laughing emoji. I'm never like, you're right, we should move our business model. Like, no.
Yeah, I think this just goes back to like another one of my office pet peeves is when somebody just so clearly misreads a situation.
Yeah.
And like misreading a situation obviously is fine, but like misreading a situation in the communication, I think is very easy to avoid. So for example, like sending a really formal email about something that like is so easy to resolve.
Right.
And
You're like, dear boss, today I will be consuming 1 element water from the break room.
Exactly.
I'm hoping this is out. You're like, why did you even tell me this?
Yeah, or like that makes a really like mountain out of a molehill type situation, and therefore it has to be a big deal, and everyone's getting looped in, and there's a big email thread about it, and why does the CEO need to know about this small, tiny decision? Like, so to me that gets really frustrating because I'm like you've misread the situation, the importance of the situation. And so I think that comes back to understanding what format is the most appropriate for the communication you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And I think that I would actually argue that the strategic thinking that you're talking about, which is probably great to be written down, I think that comes after an in-person discussion.
Yeah.
You know?
I totally hear what you're saying. I could see it coming before and or after.
But I think the in-person is the important part.
Yes.
Because if it's that big of a deal where you require very strategic thinking, a lot of like bullets and thoughtfulness about how we're going to approach a situation, that's where the in-person nature, I think, is just, you should probably just default to that.
I totally agree. But to bring up someone you might have heard of named Jeffrey Bezos, who had some success in this thing called business, they would do this memo thing at Amazon where before any live meeting, you would have to, someone would create and then everyone would read a 6-page memo.
Yeah.
And so I actually like the email before the meeting, which is like, here's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Here's the considerations. Here's my point of view. Here's the, obstacles in our way, that everyone has that context. So when you go to have the in-person meeting, you're not talking about setting the scene. You're actually debating some of these problems.
Yeah.
That's, I agree, I think very, very powerful. And I would do none of that on Slack. Like, I just feel like big decisions require thoughtfulness, which tend to be more email or in-person communication. Slack is really good for like quick updates, quick decisions. We're not changing the strategy, but we have to like, fix a little thing. Okay, put that on Slack. The rest I think needs to be more thoughtful. And maybe this is old man yelling at cloud, but I do think because our methods of communication have changed, I feel like nuanced thinking or like deep thinking is like underappreciated at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that deep thinking is underappreciated. I think that I don't know that like before Slack, everyone was thinking really deeply, and now people are just dumb. Like,
I mean, TikTok, Exhibit A.
It's true. It's true. But I think it's like, yes, the email and the longer form communication is a forcing function, and it's really easy to root out people that aren't thinking deeply about something.
Yeah, agreed. And so a tactic on emails that I think is really effective that I've started doing now is if you are working for a team, maybe your boss is like super busy, I think sending an email ahead of like a weekly check-in or like a recap of the week where they can digest the information that you're presenting them asynchronous before, so your meeting can be more effective. Because I think as your manager gets more and more busy, those weekly updates can quickly become status updates because you're not in touch with them as frequently. And you're not really like solving any issues or like coming to any decisions. You're just keeping them up to date on what you've done. That's a great way where an email can be async. Here's what I've done. Here's what I want to discuss in the meeting. And giving that to them ahead of time lets them process so you can have a more effective in-person conversation.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think another email tactic that I have, which is going to sound really silly, but is to design the email for skimming.
Yes.
Especially if you're sending it to higher ups. So for example, I think the 3 things you can do are a summary, 4 things. Summary at the top, headers, bullet points, bolding.
Yes.
So basically, if you are following, so your eye basically looks through an F. So down, over, over. If you can make sure that the key points, and if somebody had 15 seconds with your email, they would know what's up without having to parse through paragraphs and paragraphs of information. Bold the key points, create headers that describe what's underneath it, and use bullet points appropriately. That makes it a lot more easier for your words to come through and be effective.
I absolutely love that advice. I think it's probably the best tactic we've shared, including mine. So well done. But I like to only read the bold parts. And does that give you like kind of a summary of what's said? I think that's a really effective way to structure emails. So
question for you.
Yes.
About emails, because this is a piece of email etiquette that has been drilled into me, and I'm curious if you use it. How do you CC people? In what order do you use to CC people?
In what order?
Yeah. Like
Never thought about that.
Okay, so when you're addressing an email, I got yelled at many times early in my career. You have to address it like the to and then the CC. It's the most senior person to the least senior person.
No.
I still do it.
That's wild.
Nobody.
I'm gonna go back and look at my emails and see how you perceive me.
I'm pretty sure that it's just like I don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah.
I could probably find a few where I've messed that up, but like if I'm emailing Austin, the CEO, you bet he's first. Even though he could just be a CC, he could be a BCC. Nope, he's in the two. He's first. Like it is so crazy. I just got that like not beaten into me, but like kind of. And that's just something that like is no longer an etiquette thing, but I'm going to continue to do it. And I do judge people that don't do it.
Interesting.
Even though I'll never say anything about it. I just silently judge.
CC culture. I've never thought about this, so I'm sorry for offending you for all the emails I've ever
You've offended
sent.
me a lot, yeah.
Clearly. So we talked about Slack. We talked about email. Let's talk about very briefly the last leg of this stool, which is in-person communication. Any tactics for folks who kind of want to up their game professionally in that space?
I mean, I think it depends. As I've mentioned, there's so much different type of in-person. There's informal, there's formal, and there's like super formal.
Yeah.
And I think when it's super formal, like a presentation, it's all the same things that like apply to your written communication. Make sure that the presentation that you're giving is very prepared. It's easy for somebody to understand kind of what the message is within the first 30 seconds. In less formal stuff, I think it's the same. Use your best judgment. If it's just like you wouldn't use an emoji in an email, most likely, you're probably not going to like slouch down in your chair with a client or something.
Yeah.
Just make sure that you're approaching the situation commensurate with the audience.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think because so much more of our meetings, so many more of our meetings are now this virtual combination. I think there's a big unlock that more people should be thinking about, which is you can prepare and basically have like notes that guide you in every single meeting if they're virtual now. And I think that's a really big unlock. Yeah. And so I've seen people and I can tell like, oh, they're very prepared. They thought about what they were going to say. They kind of did a light script and they come off like super well-spoken, super organized. I'm always very impressed. And so I think leveraging the new ways we communicate and finding the opportunity to communicate what you need to communicate the most effectively is where you're going to stand out. And that's a huge thing that like when you're with people, you might not be able to like look down at your notes. Right. It might feel a little weirder, but that's totally common now. And I think more people should be taking advantage of that. You could just, the level of preparation you can do now for some of these things is remarkable. Yeah. You can have a slide that tells you exactly what to say. Yeah. Now you just need a basic reading comprehension and you're the smartest person in the room. So that's great. I would definitely take advantage of that. Yeah. The last thing I have to say, which is another just absurdity of work, is when you have a virtual meeting, now like the chat is like a whole other ecosystem. Yeah. And like being funny on Google Chat is now super cool. So like it just, the way we communicate at work is so silly to me.
So our tactic, be funny.
Yes, exactly. It's always a good tactic. We have one final clip from Celeste Headlee, who's going to talk about some strategies she's seen be effective in communicating at work.
Not surprisingly, our research on IM platforms is much more recent. There's not nearly as much, email's been around for a very, very long time. But yes, the early indicators are that it could possibly even be worse because email people are more likely to edit. Email people are more likely to go into depth, whereas oftentimes on things like Slack or IMs, we will dash off a message and we're less conscious or careful about how that might be perceived. Instant messaging picks up some of the negativity that occurs on social media as well, meaning it's tends to be a little more self-absorbed. We tend to be a little bit more concerned only about what our immediate needs are rather than who's receiving that message. On the other hand, Slack and IM are also kind of a cross between social media and texting. And texting, as long as we use it to a limited extent, can be very efficient. If you use texting as a way to just relay quick information exchanges, and it's the same with Slack, it can be very, very effective and efficient. But it's not useful for anything that has nuance, anything that has complexity.
I love Celeste.
Wow, it seems like she said it better than us in only 2 minutes. Great.
Celeste is the new co-host of this show. Well done. No, I love what she had to say, and I think the last thing where she was like, you can get on the phone and you can solve things very fast. It's so funny that sometimes you are convinced over Slack that like you're in an argument.
Yeah.
Someone is mad at you, and you're like having this argument in your own head with them, and you're like, I can't believe they're pissed. Like, I did nothing wrong. And then you talk to them, and they are so
oblivious.
They're so fine.
Yeah.
It's just they have a different communication style than you on Slack. Different tone doesn't come across well. So getting on the phone or talking to someone face to face, super important. My last tactic before we wrap it up, or I'll throw it over to you if you have any more, is I just want to hone in back on this like relationship building versus getting work done. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that like Slack is pointless because you can't get really deep work done on that platform. Slack is really important. I just think it's important in the sense of that's our new place of building relationships and having some fun and like being a little more like silly. And I think that is a great way to get to know your coworkers and to like show that you care about them. And that's really, really important. And so don't like eschew Slack. Is that?
I don't think so, but that's fine.
Continue. You know what word I'm trying to say?
Yes.
It's almost there. Don't forget about Slack. Don't like cast it off. I think it's super important to be present. Great way to build relationships. I would just say that if you want the best business outcomes, it's going to be through in-person meeting. It's going to be through more nuanced writing, long-form writing. And so getting good at both and understanding which game you're playing, very important.
I think that's a great way to wrap it up.
Let's roll the credits.
Good.
Our producer is Michaela Hack.
Our technical director is Uchenna Ogu.
Kate Mackey is our social media editor.
And our chief content officer is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
See ya. Welcome to Kyle and Kill's Movie Rex.
Today we're talking about long legs.
Are you driving and it's 3 a.m.?
Fall asleep. Crash your car.
Don't listen to her. Stay vigilant. Have a Red Bull.
Stay awake.
Don't crash.
Listen to the sound of our voice.